Gray Matters is brought to you by Magi. Magi is my AI solution. I get asked a lot which AI platform is best. Is it ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, Perplexity, DeepSeek? Well, I don't know. Nobody does. And that's exactly why I use Magi. Magi isn't just another AI tool. It's the command center that brings all your favorite AI models together in one powerful dashboard. Imagine having ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, and every other leading AI at your fingertips, all working seamlessly within a single interface. What makes Magi truly revolutionary, though, is how it solves the three biggest pain points for AI users. First, you can save and reuse your favorite personas across any model. Create once, use everywhere. Second, your carefully crafted prompts are stored and accessible anytime. No more rewriting the same instructions. And most importantly, Magi lets you compare results from different AI models side by side for any project. Why settle for one AI's perspective when you can instantly see how multiple models approach your challenge? Or you can effortlessly switch from model to model as you massage your content. Magi has transformed how I work with AI. It's the intelligent brain powering everything that we do at Gray Matters. And yes, Magi co-wrote this script. Steve Dotto here. How the heck you doing this fine day? And welcome to Gray Matters, the podcast for baby boomers and Gen Xers helping us lead our best life online from both a personal and, more importantly, from a business perspective. And such a show we have lined up for you. Those of you in business, you're going to like this. One of the big challenges that all entrepreneurs, all online entrepreneurs have is figuring out exactly how much to charge. What a fair price is for your services. And this is universal. This is how much should I charge if I'm a speaker at a conference? How much should I charge for the online course that I created? How much should I be charging per hour if I'm a consultant, or per hour if I'm creating work? Or how much should I charge for this project if people are hiring me on a project basis? Figuring out exactly what you should be charging is probably more of an art than it is a science. And for most of us, it's also, there's an emotional component, is we tend to undervalue ourselves, which doesn't do us, of course, any good. But of course, then we also only have ourselves to blame. Well, we're going to help you out there with a fresh look at that. Karen Laos is our guest today. Vivica is going to be chatting with her in just a few moments. And she's a specialist on making sure that you get what you deserve. Sounds like punishment, doesn't it? Certainly, you want to get what you deserve. But Karen is going to make sure that you get what you deserve and you know how to ask for what you are worth when you are negotiating, when you're setting up your businesses, or when you're planning out your income strategy for your business. It's always a challenge entrepreneurs face over and over again. We're going to shed some light on that today. So let's have a listen to Vivica and Karen.
Hello and welcome back, everyone. Today's guest is Karen Laos, a communication expert and confidence cultivator, I love that, who left corporate back in 2020 and has been teaching women how to own their own voices ever since. So we're going to talk about that. She's got 25 years of experience advising leaders at places like Google, Starbucks, NASA, and now she helps women speak up with clarity and confidence, whether it's asking for a raise, negotiating a deal, or simply learning to trust your own voice. Men, you can still listen in. She's on a mission to help 10 million women, I love this, help 10 million women ditch self-doubt and start speaking up in the boardroom and beyond. One of the things I love about Karen is I invited her to come speak to a group of mine. Now, I don't pay people to speak to my groups because I just don't. And I've never actually had anyone ask, but I really appreciate, Karen said, I'd be happy to, I'm available then. And what do you think about this for an honorarium? And I'm like, I think I can't afford it because it's a loss leader for me and I don't have a lot of money. And then she said, well, how about this? And then I said, you know what? Like, this is what we talk about, is asking what you're worth. And if she didn't ask for compensation of some sort, I would probably respect her less. So not that I want my future guests to ask me to pay them, but also I really appreciate, especially considering who you are and what you do, that you came back, and that showed me how easy it is for me to ask, at least for an honorarium, like it's not what your time is worth, but at least it's something. And I do free shit all the time. And I'm like, I should be asking for at least an honorarium. So
Yeah.
thank you for walking your talk and welcome to the show.
Thank you, Vivica. Oh, that's awesome. I love that we're starting right off with this story. So good. So good. It is important to ask, right? Like you can always say no.
Right.
I had no idea what to
Right.
expect, but you never know unless you ask.
But ask, and I wonder how many, and again, men, you can keep listening, but I wonder how many women don't ask. They're just happy to be there and they don't ask for what they're worth, whether it's their jobs, whether it's, speaking at gigs, whatever it is. Like how many people are just undervaluing themselves?
Yeah. I mean, it starts out right from the beginning. I mean, only 7% of women negotiate their first job starting salary compared to 57% of men. So we're behind from the
Wow.
start. And when I think about family, I won't go into who
Yeah.
it was, but family members that I had helped in the past to negotiate their first job starting salary.
Hmm.
One of them was really surprised because none of her colleagues, none of her classmates negotiated, but she did. And she
Wow.
got so
Wow.
much more than she originally was offered because I think they're just surprised. Wow, this college kid is going to ask for money? Whoa. You just never know.
That's awesome. Right. You never know. Like you said, what's the worst they can say is no. And they'll probably have an experience like I did, like, good for you. Damn right.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope so. Then you hear about all the horror stories. But again, definitely I love that you shared that story right away. And I love that you said that you might have respected me more. I mean, that's just such a cool outcome. So that might have to be a post for me one day.
Feel free. Why do women not do that? Like, that is a crazy statistic, and it doesn't surprise me at all. And I was immediately thinking back, have I ever, as an employee, have I ever negotiated my salary? And the answer is no. And even as a speaker, sometimes I feel like I don't know how much money I've left on the table as a speaker, not asking enough.
Hmm.
I don't want to think about it, actually.
Yeah. Yeah. I hear you for sure. I mean, I grew up with a dad who taught me, at 6 years old, he used to take me to flea markets and he would
Yeah.
always say, like, okay. And I think I was just kind of terrified of my dad. It was more like I just wanted to please him, frankly.
Yeah, yeah,
More from, he was the traditional, not emotionally connected, good provider, good person
yeah.
overall. But nonetheless, anyway, he gave me a few dollars and he just said, go have fun, but never pay full price. And so I'm thinking, okay, I have to do this thing. But then I realized I love this. I love the deal. I love helping
Mhm.
women win. And it was so funny because I remember many years ago where I went to potentially buy a car. And
Yeah,
I remember kind of going back and forth. And then that same weekend, I was out garage sailing, which is not something I typically do. But in San Francisco one
yeah,
weekend, a friend invited me. And I laughed
yeah,
and I thought I had more fun with a $20 purchase or, negotiating a $20 purchase just as
yeah.
much as I did a several $1,000 car. And I'm glad I chose the purchase
Exactly.
of the garage sale and not the car.
Yes, I love it. I love it. Why, I have another friend whose father taught her the ways of money. And I don't know what it is about our age group, but that's like two people I know. Of the thousands of women I know two women whose fathers taught them the way of money. My dad like taught me he was very much like, buy high, sell low, buy swampland in Florida and hold on to it just before they turn it into celebrations, but sell it right before it gets, like, my dad, God bless him, never made a good investment. Maybe that's why he never taught me about investing. But why do you think it is that it's not a conversation that women have on the regular like men have?
Oh, That's such a loaded question. I think the way that we have been
I know.
culturally conditioned is to make sure that everybody else is happy and put everybody else
Hmm.
first. And we don't want to rock the boat, God forbid. And then there's all of the second guessing that we do. And I think it really comes down to the way we have been trained is that it's not okay. And then sometimes
Yeah.
for people that do talk about it, they can get criticized or do. But I like to think, I'm going to get criticized no matter what. So
Yeah.
what does it matter? Now, it's easy for me to say
Yeah.
that in my 50s now. I think I would have
Right.
given you a very different answer even 10, plus years ago. But I do
Yeah.
think that that's the reason, but I think that there's multiple reasons and that it's complex. And I also will say that I don't want to elude anybody to thinking that, oh, my dad taught me all these great strategies.
Yeah.
He was actually incredibly private about our finances growing up, and we didn't grow up with much. He was a railroad engineer. My mom was a
Mm.
homemaker. Neither of them had gone to college, and they really valued education and travel. But
Yeah.
that's a bit of a side thing. I wanted to say, though, that in spite of him saying, like, persistence and determination gets the grease and asking, you have to ask, what I learned at home is that as a woman, you don't have a voice because my mom was very
Oh.
submissive. Everything was about what he said. She used to say, because I used to get so mad, like, why don't you just speak up to him? And she would just say, honey, I can't stand the silence. Like, he would ignore her if she pushed back. And so she never pushed
Right.
back because there were a couple times where he did, and he actually ignored me an entire summer when I didn't put enough gas in the car, I think. Like, I don't even know if that was the reason. But I only bring that up because I think that we all have complex upbringings. We live in,
Yeah.
like, there are things where it's really hard to know, like, what is the actual root of this? Because I'll say one other thing related to my mom. She was an incredible leader in the community. My dad wouldn't let her
Yeah.
work, but she could volunteer. And she was known for like the person that got stuff done. So it's interesting. So I think
I
that,
love that.
and I'll make one more tie-in and then, excuse me, I'll turn it over to you. But the other thing that was very powerful for me is that she um, she really taught me that, well, I shouldn't say she taught this to me. Sadly, what I have come to realize through lots of personal growth and therapy is that
Yeah.
I realized that I was very confident in my abilities. Like I think a lot of women, we are grown
Yeah.
up, we are, what do you call it, raised to produce. Like your value is based on what you produce or accomplish. And so
Hmm.
the idea of me actually just being worth something because I'm a human being never occurred to me. Like I didn't think that I had value or that I mattered. I figured, well, what I do
Right.
matters. So that's how I grew up.
Wow. Wow. So knowing that most of the people listening to this podcast are, at least 45 or older, Gen X or older, what are some things, because we've been the way we've been for an awfully long time. But if now is the time for us to finally stand up and demand our worth, what are some recommendations you would make?
Yeah, I'd say the first thing is to start small in a low stakes situation.
Mm.
Make sure that
Ah,
you are, really speaking up for something. So it might be, hey, when you're at the Starbucks line, ask for something a little bit different or something that's off the menu. In fact, I have a really funny story for when I was at Jackson Hole, Wyoming recently. I went with
mhm.
a friend and I'd never been there. And she talked about, well, everybody talked about, you have to go on the gondola, you have to go up and get a waffle. And I'm thinking, there's a waffle at the top of a gondola? Like, what is that about? But sure enough, go up to the top of the gondola and there's a waffle shop and they sell waffles and hot
Yeah.
chocolate and coffee. So everybody else
Yeah.
that was with me got their own and then I got mine. And I said to her, because there were four flavors, and I said, well, I'd really like to
Yeah.
have both. Can I have one of each, or can you mix these? And she
Yeah.
goes, oh, sure. So then I get back to my friends, and they said, what kind you get? And I said, oh, I got a combo. And they said, what? We would have loved to do that. We each got one and split because that wasn't on the menu. And I said,
Yeah.
well, sometimes you have to ask for what's not on the menu. So That would be one thing. Like try a low stakes scenario where there isn't really any
Yeah.
getting off your back if somebody says no, because I also understand it feels icky when somebody says no. Let's face it, we don't like
No.
a
Yeah.
no. But if it's
Yeah.
related to food or something like that, there's no big
If
deal.
they say no, it's no big deal.
Exactly. So that would be one thing. The other thing that I learned from a coach of mine a couple years ago that was very powerful for me, especially when I was really going after more speaking gigs, higher end, and
Yeah.
a lot of times people didn't have the budget. And he reminded me, he said, Karen, your worth has nothing to do whether somebody can pay you, what they can pay you.
Mm.
And that was such a good reminder because a lot of times we
Yeah.
personalize it and we go, I can't believe
Right.
this. And then we get all upset when
Yeah.
it's just their budget. Now, sometimes
Yeah.
there might be more money that we're leaving on the table because we don't make that ask. And I remember I made a mistake a few years ago where I told somebody, it was so funny, and I did not expect her to be a killer negotiator. She just looked
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
unassuming, one of those people,
Yeah.
you never make assumptions. Anyway, so I told her my full rate, and I said it like
Yeah.
this. I said, well, my keynote rate is, and then she came right back with, well, since you're not doing the actual keynote, how about, and she said 5,000 less. And then I said,
Yeah.
what about meeting in the middle?
Yeah.
And
Good for
we
you.
did. But that's the other thing that I continue to learn is that, first of all, you never know what money might be there or not be there.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So,
Yeah. So I have two follow-up questions. Well, one's not a
okay.
question. I literally just got off a podcast where we were talking about speaking and the difference between keynotes and breakouts and
Mm,
that we both felt that breakouts, because that's what we do, that breakouts were way more valuable than keynotes anyway. And a breakout's usually customized and it's
mhm.
longer and
Yep.
it's more interactive. And keynotes, it's usually the person doing the same old shit over and over and over again, maybe like changing the name of the state they're in. And so first of all, like I would never do this, but maybe I will now. So that if she came back to me and said, "Well, it's not the keynote, so how about $5,000 less?" I'd be like, "It's not the keynote, so maybe $5,000 more. Thank you very much, because it's more work."
Yes.
I mean, seriously, because a keynote is like
I
it's the
know.
same story you tell over and over and over again to a different audience. Like,
It was
ay,
so true, and it was so fascinating that she tuned into that word. I mean, I
yeah,
just
yeah,
I wasn't intentional about the word. But now I know
right,
I'm never saying that again. I'm saying my speaking rate is
exactly,
the things we learn.
exactly.
The other mistake that I've made more than once that I'm not proud of, but I still it feels like it still happens every once in a while, where we instead of saying like what I'd recommend is let's say they come back with a
Mhm.
number and then ideally I would say can we get closer to XYZ versus
Yeah,
saying a number, because I sometimes will be tempted to just say a number higher than what they've said, but
yeah,
it's a number still. And that's the same thing that
right,
I was helping when I help people with salary negotiations. Let's just say for
yeah,
purposes of an example, they want, $100,000 and they're offered 80. Well, rather than coming
yeah,
back with, well, what about meeting in the middle, which maybe that isn't such a bad thing to say, but instead
yeah.
of, well, how could we get closer to 100,000 if that's really
And
what you
just
want?
re-emphasizing, it's like, I'm willing to negotiate, but you have to tell me where you're, willing to come. And it's not gonna
Exactly.
and 80 is not gonna cut it, but I'm
Hmm.
not gonna tell you 90. I'm gonna
Right.
let you tell me 90, and then I can maybe get 92 or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
That okay, so you have this is never mind the audience. Like I'm going, okay, so now I have to ask you more questions. What okay, so you're especially with speaking, but really any consulting gig, any coaching or
Absolutely.
consulting gig.
And it could be,
And what and they come and you say, so what's your budget? And they're like, well, tell me what you want, or what the conversation,
yeah.
like
Yeah.
or you come at them with, normally I charge.
Hmm.
I guess I shouldn't, number one, say normally, because that's already setting up the idea
Yes.
of, but
Typically
for
or
you, I'll do
normally.
something different. Okay, so taking normally out of my conversation. So I charge $7,500 for a breakout session, for a 1 hour breakout session customized to, your audience. And then they're like, well, that's not in our budget. What's my next question?
Oh, well, can I go back even farther?
Mm-hmm.
So, first thing
Please.
that I would say, similar to what you said, what's your budget? But most people are going to tell you they don't have one. And so
Right.
I like to say it a little softer, like, is there a budget that you have that
Mm.
I can try to help you stay within? Because it makes it sound like we're working together here.
We're
And
working
and
together.
yeah, and before we even talk about fees, let's talk more about your event. Like, what is the problem you're trying to
Yeah.
solve? What are you looking for? And really getting deep into that, because a lot of times I think that there also is, and believe me, I've done all the things, either what's worked or what hasn't. And sometimes you just don't know,
Yeah.
did that work or could it have gone
Yeah.
better? So I say I'm speaking from that lens. And so one of the things that I find really helpful is to, like, if they say, well, what's your rate? Well, I really want to understand more about the problem you're trying to solve, because it's really about the value that you want. And then
Yeah.
thinking about it as, that's another thing that this coach had recommended, which I really loved, is you've got to start, again, now we're talking more about speakers, but it could be anybody. Because he
Yeah.
said you have to stop thinking about yourself as a speaker, because when you're a speaker, you basically get laid off with a severance check every time you speak. Because most speakers
That's
aren't,
true.
they're not continually hiring the same person for that event. So instead
Right.
of when's your next event, you become the event. So it's, what
Yeah.
is the problem you're trying to solve in your business that we can collaborate on and partner around? And then here's
Oh, I
how I
love that.
typically work with people. We start with a kickoff event where I do a speaking engagement. Then we figure out more of the challenges and we work together for a year or more to partner alongside, because we know that change isn't going to happen immediately. So you start really selling this thing that's way beyond one event. But I'm
One
digressing.
event.
So that's one thing.
No, you're not, Tiger. That is, yeah, no, I absolutely love that. And I think the first step, even going beyond all that, is knowing your value. I have lost gigs because I haven't charged enough.
Mhm.
One of my funny stories is when I was linked into business, my business, my company previous to Vengresso, which was my company previous to the one I have right now, Juniper reached out and said, we want you to come in and do a corporate training for us.
Mhm.
And so I came back and I had just read something that said, double double your rate and then increase it until it's even more uncomfortable or something like that. I can't remember
Oh,
exactly
yes,
what the
yes,
saying was,
yes.
but
I've had some.
right. So
Yeah.
my rate being 15, I came back at 30 thinking, that's uncomfortable. Anyway, I didn't get it.
Mm.
Couple years later, we're now Vengresso. Juniper comes to us. We need a social selling program. Now, this was a whole program compared to just like a it was a whole inclusive program versus just a small training program. Long story short, we sold them for mid six figures.
Wow.
Mid six figures versus 30K. And honestly, the content was,
Yeah.
it was definitely a lot more work, and we built a whole platform for them and really customized the program for them. But it wasn't 20x
Mm.
extra work.
Yes. Yes.
So know your worth. I think coming
Yeah.
in and knowing your worth is key. How do people find out what their worth is compared to maybe other consultants, coaches, or speakers out there? And how do people find out what the budget might be for a conference? Do you have any tips or tricks around
Yeah,
that?
I feel like this is where being around other people that do what you do is so helpful, that are
Yeah.
willing to be
Yeah.
transparent. Most of my groups, like, I
Yeah.
have no problem telling people, here's what I made for that, here's what I asked for.
Mm.
I feel like, if I'm in a circle of trust with people, and it
Yeah.
doesn't, like, I feel like I trust a lot of people. Like, it doesn't take a lot
Yeah.
to be in this little thing. But I just mean that too often, and this kind of goes back to where I think women don't talk about money enough. I love
Hmm.
money.
Hmm.
I love money because of
Yeah.
what it allows
People
me
love
to
money.
do.
Bring on the money.
Exactly. I think people are so weird about money, as opposed to just like, Why,
Yeah.
I don't know. It's so, well, this is again a whole other conversation that I find absolutely fascinating because on
Yeah.
one hand, I can understand you don't want to sound like you're bragging if you have gotten some
Yeah.
big contracts or whatnot. On the other hand, how will anybody know of what to ask for, what to make, even with people within
Yeah.
companies too. Like, I mean, there's a lot that you can find online now, but I still find
Yeah.
that the best way, especially in our age group or age category, is just networking with people and saying, "Hey, would you be
Mm-hmm.
willing to share what your rate is for that or how you came to
Yeah.
the rate for that?" Because I have
Yeah.
lots of coach friends who frankly I know I charge more than them. And
Yeah.
I just have, I don't know. I just made a decision that I was going to be a luxury brand and that's okay. But I also tell you,
Yeah.
I say that with a lot of evolution, I would say, over the past just few years, because
Yeah.
I also am known for that, and I'm not doing this anymore, but that make a deal with the individual person. Like with a corporation,
Mm-hmm.
it's less. Like, of course, I'm going to negotiate in certain situations, but I'm the one that wants to help
Yeah.
everybody, probably like you
Yep.
and everybody else listening to this. Like, oh,
Yep.
let's cut them a deal. And every frickin' time, excuse me, it
Every freaking time. You don't even have to use the word frickin'.
It is so
Every damn
fascinating.
time.
Yeah. I'm amazed when
Yeah.
you compromise and you think, "Oh, I don't really want to do this, but I want to help them." People always have money for things. I
Yeah.
had somebody who reminded me that he lives in the South and he goes, "If you go to
Yeah.
if you go to any, what are they called? Trailer park,
Yeah.
what are you going to see? You're going to see massive satellite dishes and nice cars." And
It's
his
true.
whole point was people often say, I can't afford that. Well, you find
Yeah.
money for the things that you want to pay for.
That you value. And
Yeah.
and really what it comes down to is you don't value yourself enough. Or I'm not providing enough value for you to realize. I mean, it's somewhere between you don't value you enough or you don't value me enough.
Hmm.
But it has nothing really to do with money.
Yeah.
And if you don't value me enough, it's because I have not shown you clearly enough how I can help you. If
Right.
you don't value yourself
Yeah.
enough, well, then I'm not the client. I'm not the coach for you, and you should go find somebody else.
Totally. Well, and to say that also, or to, like you said, you mentioned energy, like energetically, to just be
Yeah.
okay with, I can let this person go.
Mm-hmm.
I was trying, it was so funny. I was so tempted again just this last week. Oh, I want to help her. She had this. I gave her my rate. She said, there's no way I can afford that. I said, well, what could you
Was it me? Was it me? Are you talking about me?
I am not talking about you. So you're so funny. This was for a coaching gig, and I remember thinking, okay, I remember going to yoga, my head all spun out, trying to figure out
Yeah.
in knots like how I could do this with, because there's also fee integrity, right? I don't want to give
Right.
somebody a deal when I have other people doing the same thing like
Yeah.
that. So how do I
Yeah.
signal that? And I remember telling myself,
Yeah. This person finds out now you owe discounts on top of everything else. Like, no, it's not a
exactly.
good idea.
And so I forced myself to not think about it anymore and go to yoga and enjoy my time
Rocking
at
chair.
yoga. And sure enough, right
Yeah.
as I'm finishing up in downward dog, this idea comes to me I'm like, oh, I could do that. It's not anything that I've ever done before. And I don't know if she's going to go for it. But you know what's ironic? I'm thinking I'm this amazing person that's like really worked hard. I'm giving her this great option that's going to meet her needs.
Yeah.
I'm telling her all
Yeah.
this in a voice memo.
Yeah.
And then, but I was very clear to say, at this point, the ball is in your court. I am not going
Yeah.
to be continuing to reach out. This is the best
Yeah.
offer. This will give you
Yeah.
what you're looking for in a very
Yeah.
non-conventional way. And I
Yeah.
haven't heard from her. So there
Yeah.
you go.
Yeah.
And then the
There you go.
next
And then you
day,
just have to let it go.
yeah, I get somebody interested without even questioning the full rate, plus a full
Hmm.
fee speaking engagement.
Nice.
Next day.
Nice.
Next day.
Next day. Yeah. Yeah. Because if you go out there and say, okay, I'll cut the rate or I won't charge or whatever, that's what the universe hears. That's the energy you're putting out. And then you stop getting gigs or the rate goes down, down, down just coincidentally. It's not that you have to put it out there in any kind of public way, but what you'll start to notice, and when you stand firm, I think, by your pricing, you have the experience that you had, like, oh, here's a no questions asked, full monetary. And those people are so much easier to work with.
Yes, totally.
The nickel and dimers are, oh my God, so hard to work with
I
sometimes.
know. It's so
Yeah.
true. I cannot say that.
Yeah.
I wanted to go back to you. You had a question I never answered. A second part to the what do you say when they say, oh, like now talking more about probably a bigger contract when they say, oh, well, that's
Right.
not in our budget when you say you're right.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
my first question would be, oh, well, is there, so this is always hard because I never know exactly what to
Yeah.
say myself. So it all depends on the
Yeah.
relationship that I have with the person. But
True. Yeah.
one of the things you could do that's probably the easiest and also the easiest way out for yourself. So I'm not always recommending this, but saying, okay, if that's what you have, number one, here's
Mhm.
how I could scale my services for that. So number one, that shows, hey, I'm not going to just do the same thing for the same price.
Yes. Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
the other thumbs up, we got a thumbs up. And the other thing then would be I often say, well, there are other things that I value besides money. And I'd like to share some of those with you to see if we could, things like video footage, testimonials,
Yes.
whatever else that, a person might value.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
that's usually where I go. But sometimes if I have a really good relationship, I might dig deeper and say,
Mhm.
okay, so could we brainstorm for a minute?
Mhm.
And then asking, thinking about the value, thinking about the salaries of those people that are going to be in the room. And if you
Mhm.
imagine that every single one of them, as a result of my talk, will do 1% more business or 1%, they'll be
Yeah.
1% more effective or whatever on a daily basis.
Yeah.
When you think about that at the end of the year, that far exceeds the rate that I'm even suggesting. Would you agree with
Yeah.
that?
Yeah.
And then sort of
Yeah.
having a dialogue, and that's all if you have the
I love that.
relationship. And then I do think the other one is, are you willing to brainstorm other sources of the money? Because another coach used to
Mhm.
say, are you findable and fundable? If you're not findable on a line item of a corporate CFO, you're not going to get in. So
Right.
what's findable and fundable? Is it, things
I
like
love that.
retention, talent, thinking about, well, how are you going to be wasting time if
Mhm.
I'm not there? Not to say like, oh, I'm all that, but it's more of what will this cost
What's
you?
the cost of inaction? COI versus ROI. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. Yeah. I've definitely taken hits in my pay to spend a week in a luxury hotel in
Yes.
Auckland. And then another,
Great example.
right? Yeah. I'm like, or you'll fly my husband out too, or what, because a lot of times these corporations and companies, they have air miles, they have hotel points, they have things that they can pay you in that isn't cash. The other thing I found with a lot of schools, universities in particular, is they really do only have an honorarium. Like they are only
Mhm.
allowed to
Yeah,
spend so much money on a speaker. It's usually like 500 or $750.
right.
And they have a book budget.
Yes,
So if you've got a book,
exactly.
now you can at full price, you're not
Yes.
going to give them a cut on, but now you're getting your books into the hands of the people there, which is, the world's most expensive business card, but it's
Mhm.
still now you're getting the books into these people's hands. And if your book is a workbook that they can actually dip into during your talk, now you've got an opportunity to move into continuing education. So
Yeah.
to your point, there's a lot that you can use to fund yourself, which might not be your speaker's fee or your consulting fee or your coaching fee.
Yeah, I'm so glad
Yeah,
you brought
I
up the
love
books
that.
because that is something that I sometimes forget during these negotiations, and then it'll be an afterthought of, "Hey, by the way, do you wanna buy
Yeah.
books?"
Yeah. Oh yeah, P.S. Do you want to buy some books?
I know. So I am getting better at that, but it is funny how I still sometimes don't remember.
I literally forget I've written some books. I'm like, oh yeah, I wrote that book. That would be a good book for this. Like I don't do LinkedIn anymore, but I have like 8 books on LinkedIn. Okay. 3 books on LinkedIn. I have 3 books on LinkedIn, one that's
What?
even still relevant. Like maybe I should be selling those books along with you.
Yes. Yes. Know your worth.
Know your worth. Know your worth. With that, tell us a little bit about where people can find you and how can people work with you.
Yeah, KarenLaos.com is the central place, and last name is Laos. And I also have a free guide online called 9 Words to Avoid and What to Say Instead if you want to sound more confident and credible. That will also get you on my weekly communication tips email. And I have a podcast as well called Ignite Your Confidence. And my book
There we
is
go.
Trust Your Own Voice. So, and I'm on Instagram all the time. So, and LinkedIn.
So you'll send me those links and we'll get those links into the show notes.
Yeah.
And I love that. I love that. I thank you so much for being on my podcast. And for all of you listening, if you have any questions, go ahead and pop them into comments below. Steve keeps an eye on them for us.
Love it.
And we'll let Karen know.
Great. Excellent.
Thanks, everyone.